Hello, welcome to the first lecture of Western Civ 1. Just a quick word before I get started. I like to keep things in like bite-sized pieces. Studies show that the average attention span for watching a video online is about 10 minutes. So instead of having like really long lectures, you're gonna have like a few really short 10-ish minute lectures. So that's kind of what to expect here. So what I want to talk about today is sort of an introduction to the ancient world before we get started on discussing the book of Genesis, which is the first thing that we read. I think it's also useful to sort of answer the question, what is Western civilization? Like, what is this class that I'm enrolled in? What are we doing here? The West itself actually referred to originally to developments that took place in Europe and the Middle East that spread since the 16th century to North America, to Australia, to other parts of the world. So the part what we're looking at specifically, to begin at least, is what we would call like the Middle East. And you might say, like, that's not the West. Well, just go with it. Like, that's where we delineate the beginning of Western civilization. The developments that we're talking about include innovations in philosophy. We'll get to the philosophy a little bit later. Innovations in medicine and scientific thinking. We will look at the ancient Greeks and their theories, and we'll look at the ancient Romans and their emphasis on technology and application. So the thing is, although the scientific, political, and philosophical developments did depend in many ways on this separation from religious beliefs and customs, the Greco-Roman tradition, we can't talk about it until we talk about sort of the rise and expansion of the monotheistic faiths. So our first unit is called Nature and the Supernatural, and we're looking at the sort of the big three monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So anytime we deal with Western civilization, you have to consider the interplay that goes on, and the state of tension that exists often between religion and other sort of facets of society. Some of the major questions we're going to try to answer this semester, one of them is what is the West? What does the West include? And what is civilization? And when did it begin? And how has it progressed? And how did we get from point A to point B? What does it mean to be a human? That's a huge question. Does the Western idea of humanity refer to other peoples in the world? That's kind of more of a question for Western Civ too, but we're going to touch on that a lot this semester as well. And finally, we're going to be looking at questions about human behaviors, aims, what human societies are meant to do, what their purpose is, what is the good life for a human being, what, if anything, do humans have in common with other animals? So these are some of the kinds of questions we're going to be answering this semester. A list of major themes we talk about. I don't know, because I think themes are important. One thing you'll see often are tensions between the individual and society, or the individual and the state. We're not going to deal so much with the state in my course, but we will definitely deal with sort of the way that the individual and society play off each other and interact. Religion is huge. You can't deal with Western civilization without talking about religion. So oftentimes there will be tensions between religion and the state as well. And because we're dealing with religion, we're dealing with the tensions between individuals and their religion, right? So an individual and his relationship with God, or the idea of the holy, or his religious faith. So those are three big themes. Another big theme, because I have a unit structured on death, it's just coping with that fact that our time on Earth is really short. What are we supposed to do with it while we're here? And then later on at the end of the semester, we'll look more closely at the theme of scientific discovery, technological innovation, stuff like that. Religion really is this sort of foundation of Western civilization. And I think there are some really important questions to ask when you are examining, like, where did religion come from? How does it come about? why does it come about? Like, what is the role, function, or purpose of it? Why would humans in the past, do you think, have felt the need to believe in something that's totally beyond this world? I mean, I think we just sort of take religion for granted in the modern world and just accept it as a fact of our heritage. But it's not that it existed in a vacuum. It had to have come from somewhere. I maintain that religion serves to create this sense of order in a chaotic world, right? In a world that in pre-scientific societies, things are happening that don't make sense, right? Why was there this flood? Why was there this earthquake? Religion gives you explanations for that. So it creates that sense of order in a chaotic world. It also gives us a purpose, right? So it tries to answer questions like, why are we here? What are we doing here? How can we make sense of what is happening to us? So I think it's a really neat way of viewing religion as like a shield against terror, right? This sort of barrier between all of these natural catastrophes and human problems. It gives us answers, it gives us reasons, it gives us a purpose for all of that. Religion in the ancient world really tries to explore this tension between order and total chaos. I don't know. The term religion, I keep using it, and you might be wondering, like, what on earth does that mean? We're talking about stories about gods and their relationships with humans. Stories that deal with how the universe and the earth happened, how they came to be, how humans were, how we got here, and now how we should live, and how society should be organized. So all of that comes under the umbrella of religion. And then religion also gives ancient people a worldview. And everyone knows that worldviews give it gives you purpose, right? It gives a human life meaning if you have this sort of grand picture of how, things are structured and how things are supposed to work out. Religion is not new, right? Obviously. We can trace religious beliefs back to the Paleolithic era. So we're talking 2.5 million years ago to about 10,000 years ago, where we see early humans leaving behind material evidence of beliefs that look really religious. The fact that these people buried their dead suggests to anthropologists that they had some kind of belief in an afterlife. If you look at the way that people were buried, they were often buried with personal objects and food offering in their graves. And that suggests that there was some kind of belief that people survived after death in some fashion. That they'll continue their activity in a world beyond this one. You also see graves oriented toward the east. So that connects the fate of dead people with the course of the sun and therefore a hope of rebirth as well. So, like I said, religious beliefs are nothing new. We can trace them back pretty far. The beginnings of civilization as we know it, we typically can trace them back to an area that we call the Fertile Crescent. And if you look at this map here, and you can identify the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers right here at the top, this is where the Fertile Crescent is. It's about where Iraq is today. The Tigris and the Euphrates are rivers, and they flooded, and they flooded pretty unpredictably. So one of the things you realize if you look at a lot of different religious documents from the distant past, you'll see flood stories in all of them. It's not like Noah, it has the only flood story. So because there's a lot of civilization developing here, and they're developed in this sort of riverbed, that fact alone seems to indicate, why there are so many flood stories in so many ancient religions. So the first civilization that we have a written record of is the Sumerian civilization. We can trace them back to between 3500 and 2300 BCE. They're huge. They're so important because they invented the decimal system. They invented mathematics as we know it, and law, and the first city. the first written language, which we call cuneiform. They invented record keeping and wheels and a lunar calendar. The Sumerians are, they really are the best evidence we have for the first civilization. Here's a cute little, this is an example of their system of writing, cuneiform. So it's a little character-based system. I don't know, you look at these and they look kind of like emojis. I think they're kind of cute. So what happens, how civilization comes about, is scholars trace back the progress of humans transforming from these hunter-gatherer economies throughout the Near East or the Middle East into these stable cultures that, instead of being nomadic, they rely on domesticated crops and animals for their sustenance. So once you had dependable supplies of food, that led to population increases, which ultimately led to competition for resources and the specialization of tasks and record keeping. And that's where writing is invented, and ultimately gets widely adopted in Egypt and in Mesopotamia. I'll just say a couple of quick words about after the Sumerians are taken over by the Akkadians, the Amorites. The Amorites, you might remember, King Hammurabi is super important for them. He develops the Code of Hammurabi, and that's one of the oldest examples of a set of laws that we have today, so that's huge. You have this really complex and successful civilization in Egypt that is located in northern Africa around the Nile Delta. Egypt is unified in 3150 BCE, and it flourishes all the way until its late period, when it becomes a province of Rome in the year 30.